The young and the restless spoilers. Victor's calculated prisoner. Victor Newman had built an empire on his ability to outwit, outlast, and outmaneuver his enemies. His instincts were razor-sharp, his caution unrelenting, and his trust, well, almost non-existent. That's why, when whispers of betrayal reached his ears, he acted swiftly, decisively, and without hesitation. Claire, his granddaughter, was now locked in the cold, stone confines of the Newman estate's hidden basement. A grim yet necessary measure. Victor stood outside the heavy steel door, his expression unreadable. The muffled sound of Claire's frantic cries reached his ears, but his resolve remained unshaken. The stakes were too high. This wasn't a matter of familial trust or sentimentality, this was about survival. He had spent a lifetime ensuring his family's safety and empire's dominance, and he wasn't about to let anyone, friend or foe, jeopardize that. Not even Claire. The seeds of betrayal. The storm had begun weeks ago when Victor first noticed Claire's unusual behavior. Her late-night phone calls, her cryptic absences, and her evasive demeanor, it all pointed to one thing: Jordan. Jordan, the enigmatic adversary who had wormed her way into their lives like a venomous snake. Ruthless and manipulative, she had a knack for exploiting weaknesses, and Victor had no doubt she had set her sights on Claire. It was a calculated move, one Victor would have made himself in his prime. Claire, young and idealistic, had always craved approval and independence, and Jordan had likely promised her both, wrapped in deceit and lies. What truly solidified Victor's suspicions, however, were the rumors. Whispers that Claire had been meeting with Jordan in secret, sharing sensitive information about Newman Enterprises and, worse, scheming against Nikki and Victoria. It was unthinkable. His granddaughter, aligning with the enemy? The thought was a knife to his heart, but Victor knew better than to let emotion cloud his judgment. If Claire had turned traitor, she was a liability, a threat to everyone he held dear. The basement confession. Inside the dimly lit room, Claire paced like a caged animal. Her voice was hoarse from screaming, but she refused to give up. "Grandpa. Please, let me out," she shouted, her fists pounding against the thick metal door. "I swear, I'm not with Jordan. I want her dead just as much as you do." Victor's voice echoed through the intercom, calm and unyielding. "Do you take me for a fool, Claire? You think I don't see through this act? Jordan's poison is all over you." Claire's knees buckled as she slid to the floor, tears streaming down her face. "No. You don't understand. She manipulated me, yes, but I realized too late. I want to fix this. I want to help you take her down." Victor remained silent for a moment, his mind racing. Was this another ploy? Another layer to Jordan's intricate web of lies? He couldn't risk it. Not when Nikki and Victoria's lives were on the line. He had already lost too much in his life, friends, allies, even family members, to schemes like this. He wasn't about to let history repeat itself. The plan in motion. What Claire didn't realize was that Victor had anticipated every possible move Jordan might make. Her calculated attempts to isolate him, to plant seeds of doubt within his family, were as transparent to him as glass. By detaining Claire, he wasn't just neutralizing a potential threat, he was dismantling Jordan's strategy. Without Claire, Jordan would lose her foothold in the Newman family. She would be exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Victor had seen to that. He had quietly reinforced his alliances, secured his assets, and planted misinformation to keep Jordan chasing shadows. The trap was set. All that remained was to watch her fall into it. Unseen consequences. Upstairs, Nikki and Victoria were oblivious to the drama unfolding below. To them, Claire was simply absent, likely taking time to herself after a string of family tensions. They had no idea Victor had locked her away, nor did they understand the depth of his suspicions. "Do you think she's okay?" Victoria asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. Nikki nodded absently. "Claire has always been a little impulsive, but she'll come around. She knows where home is." Victor, listening to their conversation from his study, felt a pang of guilt. He hated keeping them in the dark, but he knew it was for their own good. If they learned the truth, their emotions might cloud their judgment, and Jordan would use that against them. For now, ignorance was their best defense. Claire's desperation back in the basement, Claire's cries turned to whispers. "Grandpa, please," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I can help you. I can prove I'm loyal." Victor leaned against the wall outside, his expression hard. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to trust that she was innocent, that her pleas were genuine. But trust had always been his Achilles heel. It had cost him dearly in the past, and he wasn't about to make the same mistake again. "You think you can manipulate me," he said finally, his voice cold. "I've been in this game far longer than you've been alive. I know every trick, every angle. If you truly want to prove yourself, you'll stay right where you are until Jordan shows her hand. Then, and only then, will I decide what to do with you." Claire buried her face in her hands, her sobs echoing off the walls. She had no choice but to wait and hope that Victor would see the truth before it was too late. Victor's victory as days turned into weeks, Jordan began to falter. Her plans unraveled without Claire's involvement, and Victor's countermeasures closed in around her like a tightening noose. By the time she realized she had been outplayed, it was already over. Victor had won. Down in the basement, Claire sat in silence, her hope dwindling. Then, one day, the door creaked open. Victor stood there, his expression unreadable. "Come," he said simply. Claire hesitated, unsure whether this was a reprieve or another test. But as she stepped into the light, she realized one thing: her grandfather was always 10 steps ahead. And in his world, trust was a luxury no one could afford. Victor's deception. Jordan was growing restless. Days had passed without a word from Claire, and the silence gnawed at her nerves. She prided herself on control, on staying ahead of the game, but this sudden blackout left her vulnerable. Claire was her key, her most valuable pawn, and without her, Jordan's plans were crumbling. Then, her phone buzzed. A message from Claire's number lit up the screen. "We need to talk. I made a mistake siding with Victor. Let's meet tonight at the old pier. 10 p.m. Come alone." Jordan exhaled, a smile creeping across her lips. Finally, some good news. Claire was still hers, or at least, willing to be. She quickly replied, confirming the meeting. The thought of regaining her grip on Claire filled her with renewed confidence. Victor's arrogance wouldn't last. But what Jordan didn't realize was that the message wasn't from Claire. It was from Victor. The trap at the pier. Victor stood at the edge of the abandoned pier, his posture commanding despite the biting wind that swept in from the water. He knew Jordan would come, her desperation made her predictable. He held Claire's phone in his hand, a weapon as effective as any blade. A faint light shimmered in the distance, growing brighter as Jordan's car approached. She arrived promptly, stepping out of her car with the practiced grace of someone who always demanded control of the room. Dressed in black and armed with her signature confidence, she scanned the area, her sharp eyes searching for Claire. Instead, she found Victor. "Victor," she said, her voice smooth but guarded. "I didn't expect to see you here. Where's Claire?" Victor smirked, the corner of his mouth curling into a look that sent shivers down Jordan's spine. "You didn't think I'd let you play me so easily, did you?" Jordan's confidence faltered for a split second before she recovered. "What's the meaning of this?" "Claire called me." "Claire's not calling anyone," Victor interrupted, holding up her confiscated phone. "You've been dancing to my tune all along." Jordan's expression darkened. "What do you want, Victor?" "If you think this little ambush will stop me, it's not about stopping you," Victor said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's about ending this once and for all." Jordan's counterattack. Victor's men emerged from the shadows, surrounding Jordan with precision and silent menace. She was cornered, but she wasn't defenseless. With a sly grin, she reached into her coat and revealed her trump card, a device displaying a live feed of Sharon, bound and terrified, in an undisclosed location. If you think killing me is the answer, think again, Jordan said, her voice dripping with malice. You take me out, and Sharon dies. Victor's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He barely knew Sharon, their lives intersected occasionally, but she wasn't family, and she certainly wasn't part of his plans. Jordan had underestimated him if she thought he would hesitate. You're threatening me with someone who means nothing to me, Victor said coldly. A bold move, but a foolish one. Jordan's smile faltered. Even you wouldn't let an innocent woman die just to win. Victor took a step closer, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. You clearly don't know me as well as you think. The weight of decisions. Sharon's muffled cries echoed faintly from the live feed, but Victor's expression didn't waver. His entire life had been a series of hard choices, sacrifices made for the greater good. Or for his own survival. Sharon was a casualty he was willing to accept if it meant neutralizing Jordan for good. You're ruthless, Jordan spat, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. You'd let her die, just like that? Victor tilted his head slightly, his voice calm and calculated. You made this bed, Jordan. Don't act surprised when you're forced to lie in it. Jordan's facade cracked further, her confidence eroding under the weight of Victor's indifference. For the first time, she realized she might not leave the pier alive. But even in the face of defeat, she wasn't about to give up. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a secondary device, one that threatened to detonate Sharon's location unless she gave the command to stop it. Victor watched her carefully, his mind working at lightning speed. The stakes had risen, but so had his determination. You're desperate, he said. That's why you're making mistakes. Victor's triumph. Before Jordan could respond, Victor's men sprang into action. A sniper stationed at a distance fired a single, precise shot, disarming Jordan of her device. The live feed flickered and died as Victor's team took control of the situation. Jordan screamed in frustration, but her fight was over. Victor stepped closer, his imposing figure casting a shadow over her. You thought you could outplay me, he said, his voice laced with quiet triumph. But I don't lose. Jordan, now restrained, glared up at him. Kill me, and you'll regret it. You don't know what I'm capable of. Victor smirked. I know exactly what you're capable of. That's why I'm ending this. No redemption. As Jordan was dragged away, Victor turned to his men. Ensure Sharon is safe. If there's any fallout from Jordan's schemes, clean it up. Quietly. One of his men hesitated. And Jordan, sir? What do we do with her? Victor's gaze hardened, the weight of decades of battles and betrayals etched into his expression. Make sure she doesn't walk away from this. There was no room for redemption, no chance for leniency. Jordan had played her final hand, and she had lost. Victor Newman wasn't a man who granted second chances, not to enemies who threatened his empire and his family. Victor walks away as the pier emptied. Victor stood alone, the wind whipping through his coat. The night was silent now, the chaos of Jordan's defeat fading into the distance. He didn't look back. There was no need to. In his world, there were no loose ends, no unfinished business. Sharon's fate had been collateral damage, a calculated risk he was willing to take. Victor Newman, once again, had proven that in the ruthless game of power, only the strongest and the smartest survived.